West Coast Karens ruin a neighborhood treasure. My garden used to be the talk of the town. It mattered to me, my family, and my neighbors. But then developers decided to erect a McMansion right next door. It's so tall it blocks off most of the light to my garden. It's completely ruined something that was very important to me. Even worse, the people who bought the house seem to have no idea what a horrible thing they've done. Where I live, real estate developers have started snatching up family homes, bulldozing them, and building enormous $2 million houses on the plots of land. The houses also stick out horribly in terms of aesthetics. Think single-level brick homes with a 3-level gigantic white and black box in the middle. My home's been in my family for several generations. We've always been known for having a large, beautiful garden. We invited kids over to help with gardening. We gave away so many veggies, we'd hold parties, etc. It's been a neighborhood treasure for years. Until developers snatched up the lot next door, bulldozed it, and erected an enormous house that blocked out the light to most of the garden. Many of us tried to fight it with the city, but everything was denied. It was heartbreaking. Our neighborhood has been changed forever. This was a link to my family, and I've almost had to go through a grieving process over it. The new owners moved in and were not welcomed warmly by people in the neighborhood. I avoided them for as long as I could, other than politely waving or nodding. It was a young couple in their early 20s. We finally came face to face, and the woman asked if we could chat. She said that they felt like maybe they'd done something wrong when they moved in, or if they aren't pulling in their trash bins or something, being too loud, etc., because people haven't been very friendly. The guy says that he's surprised, considering it felt like a nice and somewhat affluent neighborhood, and given the price, he was expecting friendly neighbors. I asked if they had done any research about the area. They said that they moved from California, so no. I said that maybe that was their mistake. They said they didn't know what I meant, so I asked if they'd ever looked in our backyard. They said yes, and they said they think the garden is cute. I said yes, the garden was a neighborhood treasure. The garden that now has about half less sunlight than before that house was built. The guy said, "Well, it's not our fault you built the garden there, is it?" I said, "Well, you guys got what you paid for. $2 million for a house that everyone in the neighborhood hates." I said that I hoped it was worth it and wished them a nice day. When I told another neighbor about the exchange, she told me that she does feel bad for them moving in without having any idea what they were getting themselves into. Am I the jerk for telling them they got what they paid for? About a quarter of commenters on this story took the original poster's side, mostly because they hate gentrification. The rest may not feel warmly about it, but they also saw how unnecessary this whole exchange really was. The homeowners didn't build the house. They simply moved into it. As for researching the area, what would that have told them? Is it normal to ask before moving into a house if any of the neighbors had a garden that was recently ruined? I'd be a terrible buyer in that case, because it would never occur to me to ask that question. Some also thought the OP in this story was a little egotistical. It's possible that some of the neighbors are simply wary about gentrification, and that their hatred for this McMansion had very little to do with OP's personal backyard garden. And while the homeowners come across as rude and dismissive by implying it was OP's fault for putting the garden there, OP was already attacking them at that point and making snide comments about a situation they knew nothing about. They were wrong for what they said, but not all people are going to choose their words wisely when they've just been put on the defensive. You can hate the way your neighborhood is developing and still be polite to the people who live there. Being petty and standoffish won't demolish the house. It just ruins somebody else's day for no good reason. What do you think? Was OP the jerk, or was he justified? Why or why not? Let us know your opinion in the comments. Broke boyfriend tries to force me to buy his family dinner. I've been dating my boyfriend Ricky for 5 months. He's divorced, but he hates this word and goes with the word divorcee instead, since the first one makes it sound like he was dumped when it was him who initiated it. Anyways, he always goes on long rants about his exes and says stuff like, "I hope you don't have this awful habit my ex has," or "hope you like XYZ because my ex didn't," and the list goes on. I found a second job recently, and he's been having me pay every time we go out. When I protest, he'll say he's going through a rough patch and is seeing how much help I can offer. Last night, he invited his family to join us for dinner. We got to the restaurant first. He asked me if I brought enough money. I asked why, and he told me that he told his parents that I'd pay for their meals. I asked why I would, and he went on about his parents going through a rough patch just like him. I said, "I'm sorry, but this can't be a coincidence." He asked what I meant, and I told him that I would not be paying. He insisted. I refused and said no. He then leaned back and said, "Well, you're here, so not much of a choice you have anyway," while laughing like it was funny. I silently got up, took my phone and purse, and walked right out. He was shocked. He started shouting after me to stop and wait, but I didn't. I went home, and he called me enraged, saying that I did a horrible thing walking out on him and his parents when I could have just paid. I told him that their unfortunate financial situation isn't my problem, and that I wasn't obligated to pay for their food. If they couldn't pay for their meals, then they should not go out. He got offended and said, and I quote, "You're making money a priority, just like my ex did." Then he went on about how disrespectful my attitude was and how I made him look small in front of his parents and forced him to lie about why I wasn't there when they came. We've been going back and forth about it until now. He's mad and is refusing to speak to me until I apologize. Am I the jerk? I feel bad because his parents are lovely, and I've been doing my best to keep a good relationship with them. Not only is OP not the jerk, but Ricky's logic here makes no sense. How did she force him to lie? We don't really learn much about the parents here. It's actually a perfectly reasonable assumption that they would have been uncomfortable if they knew Ricky had offered up his girlfriend's money without her permission. They're pretty much just bystanders in this story, and Ricky is trying to use them to get his way. They deserve to know what he did so they can weigh in on it. Maybe they'd set their son straight. The sad reality is that no matter how much OP likes his parents, her relationship with them might be short-lived. They can be lovely people all they want, but if Ricky keeps this act up, OP has no reason to stay with him for very long. If they really like OP, then they'd probably support her decision if she chose to leave him. I can't imagine most decent parents being happy to learn that their son treats his woman like a meal ticket. If you made it this far in the video, consider liking and subscribing for more videos coming. I'm sick of paying legal fees, so I bought a dog instead. The backstory is that my husband is 45 and I'm in my early 30s. We have 2 kids who are still in diapers. I am the provider. I make the most money, and everything was mine prior to the marriage. He's been in a bitter custody battle that started on our first date. His ex and her husband were at the gym while his kid was in the daycare. His ex had him jailed for waving at their kid. I was right there on our first date, so I saw it was just a wave. Very seriously, he only waved. He had visitation, but she had a temporary restraining order on him and alleged that he waved at her. I fought hard for him. I felt so bad for him. He was my friend for years prior to us dating. Legal fees incurred from the wave included $5,000 for a criminal defense attorney, between $1,000 and $2,000 on classes and psychological evaluations that she argued she wanted from the court, and $1,700 on bond. The case was eventually thrown out and the restraining order closed. Then, since she couldn't get him there, she went after paternity and custody. We spent $5,000 on a men's divorce attorney to only obtain visits, since visits were in the TRO order. He had nothing until this was established. Once he spent money on an attorney, or rather I spent money, she backed off. Years later, she's at it again, so I spent $7,500 more. We are now in alternative dispute resolution, and the attorney wants $1,500 more to proceed into ADR. Plus, he had to take another parenting class, and he has to pay for the mediator. This has been since 2018. It's been 4 years, and tens of thousands flushed. And their kid is nonverbal. He has autism. It's terrible. The situation is terrible. Yet my children and I suffer. I live working around the clock for her legal fees and the rent. We eat mac and cheese and frozen peas most nights. We don't go anywhere. My kids are lucky if I'm home long enough to go to a park on some days. They have to sometimes go to work with me, and thank God I've got that option. I said forget the $1,500 more. I'm so tired of paying, and the attorney said if she doesn't settle in ADR, they'll go to trial, which will be tens of thousands more. If trial hits, he wants a replenished retainer. I tried legal aid, but she's a snake and consulted them first. I went out and bought a zoo membership. I took my kids out to eat for the first time in a year. We went to Chuck E. Cheese. We got new things at Target, and I got them a pug puppy, which I lied and told my husband I found. And I got a gym membership. I've been having severe anxiety attacks from all the financial stress. I get that he works, and he contributes into that legal fee a smidge, and yeah, I lied, and yeah, I spent it on me and the kids, but I'm tired of living broke over this woman and this kid of his. I love the boy, but I love my kids, and my kids have needs. I finally told him the truth, and he was so upset that he wants me to pay for the legal fees immediately before his ADR in October. I told him no. He will be there with a mediator, and she will not settle. Am I the jerk for spending the legal fee money on my kids and myself? The biggest consensus is that this OP is a jerk for buying a dog when she can barely support the family. It's also worth noting that she's commented on this story a lot, and a number of those comments are just attempts to plug her husband's YouTube channel. Look, start a channel all you want, but if you can barely afford to feed your stepchildren, then growing your channel should be a secondary concern to getting money through more stable means. Maybe my own YouTube channel isn't the best place to make this argument, but I stand by it. Also, his channel was responsible for the restraining order. I can't tell you the name because it's so graphic that I have no idea how to clean it up for the YouTube censors, which is probably part of the reason it isn't making him any money. You can find OP's username in the description if you want to follow her comment history to find a link, but I don't recommend it. He just bounces around and screams obscenities at the camera while playing guitar very badly. I can definitely see how his ex used this content to have a judge order psychological evaluations. You can get away with that sort of thing if you're an attractive teenage girl on TikTok, but a grown man with Tourette's just winds up looking classless. He and OP have now reached an agreement to save money by allowing him to represent himself at trial. In other words, his ex has already won. But I guess OP at least got a dog out of it. Entitled friend doesn't take my horse phobia seriously enough. I have a phobia of horses. I put phobia in quotation marks because phobias are irrational fears, and I don't think my fear is irrational, but everyone else in my life keeps calling it a phobia. I do like animals, but horses are just not it for me. I don't like being around them, and I have no interest in petting them or riding them. When I was around 8 years old, a horse attacked me unprovoked and nearly killed me, and I was hospitalized. My best friend Eliza is the opposite of me. When we were in high school, she was your stereotypical horse girl. She owns some horses of her own now and is still obsessed with horses. I don't interact with Eliza's horses and never have. I respect that we can have our own interests, and Eliza and I have different things to talk about. I have a 4-year-old daughter, Tanya, and Eliza occasionally kindly volunteers to babysit for me. Eliza has her own daughter of similar age, and they play together nicely. Last week, I asked Eliza to babysit for me so my partner and I could go to my cousin's child-free wedding, and she agreed. I paid Eliza to babysit and gave her some extra money to get herself and the girls takeout. Well, when I picked Tanya up and was driving home after, Tanya was telling me about how she sat on a horsey. At first, I thought Tanya was talking about a toy rocking horse, but then she told me about how she fed the horsey some apples. When I got home, I called Eliza and asked if she had my daughter interact with her horses. At first, Eliza denied everything and said she didn't know what I was talking about. But when I said Tanya told me about it, Eliza admitted that she held Tanya whilst she was sat on one of her horses and let Tanya help feed one of her horses. Eliza went on and on about how safe it is and that she was in complete control of the situation, that the horse was standing completely still when she held Tanya on the horse's back. I told Eliza that what she did was irresponsible and that doing it behind my back was unacceptable. I was so angry and uncomfortable. She said that I'm overreacting because of my phobia and said that Tanya was completely safe, and she went on about how well-trained her horses are and how she knows so much about horses. I said I didn't care and that she should think about what she did. My family thinks I overreacted and that I should apologize to Eliza, that I'm projecting my phobia onto my daughter. Am I the jerk? Edit to add that Eliza never wears a helmet when riding her horses, so I highly doubt she put one on my daughter. I don't think she even owns any helmets. I would have been okay with Tanya feeding or petting the horses, but Eliza putting her on a horse's back made me very uncomfortable. Also, Eliza keeps her horses in a field that's around an hour drive from her actual home, so I didn't ever think she'd take my daughter there. The most relevant detail in this story is the fact that Opie's daughter is 4 years old. I'm not concerned about the helmet. One of the comments made a good analogy that wearing a helmet on a stationary horse would be like sitting in a car in a showroom and buckling your seatbelt. But at 4 years old, the parent has final say in what the child is and isn't allowed to do. Yes, OP might be projecting her own fears a little bit, but it's nobody else's job or right to go behind her back to challenge that. If the daughter were older and had more autonomy, it would be another story. In that case, her daughter will reach an age where OP can't control what she does. But the fact that Eliza felt the need to lie about it in the first place is a good indication that she knew she was in the wrong. I don't think OP really owes her friend an apology here. I do think they should talk things out and explain these concerns. It would be going overboard to let this ruin the friendship. Even if there's an argument to be made that OP could loosen up a bit, Eliza still needs to learn some boundaries. The comments on this are split more or less in half. Which side do you land on? Did the friend do nothing wrong, or does OP have a right to be upset? Head to the comments and let us know your thoughts. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.